Good afternoon and welcome back to another live episode on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel. I feel I should be wearing yellow today, given it's transfer deadline day, but Callum's still not returned to the show, and making a very quick hat-trick appearance on the show is Johnny Main. Johnny, a lot has happened since your second appearance to the third. Of course, with the manager being sacked, I suppose with getting you on, I'll just get your thoughts on the whole situation from the weekend.
Quickly, because I don't want to depress myself anymore. I said after the last time I was on Glen, and we discussed this beforehand, that I made another prediction that he won't be sacked after Saturday regardless. But that was obviously wrong because I think the manner of the defeat was so bad. I think it shouldn't have been allowed to happen because I think it was pretty obvious they had the statement ready to go, before he was actually sacked. So he should have just been sacked on Monday night. And it would have saved, not that I feel particularly any sympathy for him, or not a massive amount of sympathy for Jim Goodwin, but he should have been spared the ignominy of that on Saturday. It had a bit of an inevitability feel about it after the first one went in. The second one went in. Just thought, this is just going to get, really, really ugly. I'd rather, we walked off. If we'd walked off and forfeited, we might have taken a 3-0 defeat, which would have been better than 6. But I'm not sure how that would have gone down with the SFA. But yeah, it was inevitable, and I'm quite relieved that it's over. Callum's lucky he's missed all of this. We're left to talk about the wreckage that remains and what's coming up. So that's going to be fun. But yeah, I'm a bit relieved. I've calmed down slightly since Sunday. Saturday night was a write-off. Just massively angry. Sunday I'd calmed down a bit. Monday, yesterday I felt a bit better. And now today we're ready to go again.
Ready to go again ahead, of course, Wednesday, tomorrow, of course, at time of recordings, game at home to St Mirren, which will see Barry Robson take charge of the Aberdeen team for the second time. Of course, taking charge last time, Stephen Glass, when he departed the team. Taking part, I noticed the statement called them an interim coaching team, not an interim management team. Make of that what you will. So alongside Barry Robson will be development coach Scott Anderson, who of course has got a wealth of experience through the youth academy, coaching the 16s, 17s, even the under 20s. He was assistant manager to Paul Sheeran when, of course, Paul Sheeran was in charge of that largely successful youth side. And we've also brought in Steve Agnew, a well-experienced assistant coach to Steve Bruce, spent a long time working with him. 20 years of coaching experience, starting from Gateshead, going all the way through, including clubs like Aston Villa, Hull, Middlesbrough, where he worked under Gordon Strachan. Of course, that's where he knew Barry Robson from. So we're bringing in a coach not only with a vast amount of experience, but a coach that also knows the man that we've put in charge of the coaching team as well. What did you make of the statement that the club put out in terms of this coaching team and kind of almost giving them what seemed to be a bit of time to resurrect the wrongs of recent weeks?
Well, that'd be a good start. Just a win would be a nice start. I think by bringing in Steve Agnew, that it maybe indicates that we're not going to rush into something, which I think is probably a good thing. So if we take our time rather than rushing into it like we did last time with Jim Goodwin. Steve Agnew obviously has a lot of experience, knows Barry Robson is a respected coach. So it doesn't seem to be very short term. So it seems to be that they're going to be given a run of games to try and get us back up the league and get us into some form and stop the bleeding, which is a good thing. I'm not too sure. I've seen some people say they might get the rest of the season. I'm pretty sure that won't happen. Maybe depending on who we line up to replace Glen, obviously, and availability and all that. But I won't say I'm not averse to that because I haven't seen what we're going to be like on Wednesday or the subsequent games. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut on that and say it can't be any worse than it was. Surely it can't be any worse than it was. So I'm prepared to wait a bit of time that we can get it right and not make the mistake that we've made the last two appointments.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think the board have made a better attempt of this statement than they did the one that related to Jim Goodwin and the show of support. They've left it very much open-ended in terms of they will be afforded the opportunity to get us back into that European places. As you said, I think things can't get much worse, surely. Although, if you want to look at Steve Agnew's record, just don't look at his actual managerial record. Think maybe look at the stuff he's in terms of coaching instead. But, Barry Robson and Scott Anderson, both guys who have spent a lot of time, Scott more so, with some of the younger players at this club and developing players. Do you think now we might see some of these younger guys get more of a first team opportunity? I'm thinking the likes of a Ryan Duncan. Obviously, Alfie Bavidge's name's been mentioned a lot pre-World Cup break with his scoring record. Connor Barron, of course, came to fruition in Barry Robson's first spell in charge as well. Do you think we could see some of these young players, or is it still a bit of a turbulent time to throw some of these young players in starting on Wednesday?
I think it is for Wednesday. And I suppose if it depends on the transfer business we do between now and midnight as to whether or not we see the likes of Alfie Bavidge getting a chance. I don't think, obviously Wednesday I think is too soon and things are a bit turbulent, I suppose. So we're kind of, I wouldn't throw the young kids in. Maybe Ryan Duncan might get a start because he's obviously played in a couple of games already. But I don't see us going down the youth route immediately, but let's get a couple of wins if we can, however we can, and then try blooding them in whilst the team's in a bit of better form than it is just now. I just don't think it's fair to throw them in. It's interesting you mentioned Connor Barron. Do we see him playing more of a role now that Jim Goodwin's gone, or is it irreparable between him and the club and his agent as a whole? I'd like to think not, because when he played last year, he was excellent in the midfield, and we really miss him. A player of his quality. Maybe it's a fitness thing, maybe it's his injuries. He's never come back from that, but he's not been the same player since he came back. And if it was related to a feud with the club or the manager, maybe he comes back in, which would be a boost, I suppose. But I know he's a young player, but I don't think he would be classed as blooding the youngsters.
No.
Because he has experience at first team level. But yeah, it depends what business we do for the rest of the day. Will define, I suppose, whether we need to blood the youngsters, because we are definitely short in certain areas.
Yeah. One area, I think I put a tweet up this morning asking those fans on social media that follow us on Twitter at @RTG_podcast. If you don't, what or who you'd like to see us sign on transfer deadline day, and if there was any thoughts of any outgoings. And I think it's fair to say we're quite a greedy bunch today. I was a big fan of Stuart Fisher's tweet posting the starting 11 from Darvel and said that all these players can leave the club. But I think it's safe to say the consensus was a centre-back, goalkeeper, right-back, and striker as well seems to have cropped up a few times. Of course, we've already signed Matty Pollock on loan from Watford. That deal was announced not long after I did the live the other day. Matty confirming that despite Jim Goodwin's sacking, he had no hesitation to come up and join the club, probably because he actually knows he has an opportunity to play games, starting on Wednesday night, of course, with Liam Scales being out suspended. He has only made 5 appearances this season for Watford, did make 39 when playing for Cheltenham last season. I mean, Johnny, we're not going to sit here and say that we know all about Matty Pollock and what he's going to bring to this defence, but I think it's fair to say he's going to be chucked into the deep end in this defence with Liam Scales missing, of course, Jack McKenzie, long-term injury as well.
That's right. I had kind of forgotten that Scales was suspended. I blotted that out from my memory, I suppose. Yeah. But I was going to say anyway, if he can stand on two legs or even one leg, get him into the centre of defence, because he can't be any worse than the two that have been there, recently. Unfortunately, Anthony Stewart's going to be playing, I'd imagine, tomorrow night. But we need more. We need more depth at centre back if Jack McKenzie's going to be out for any length of time as well. And even if he isn't, we still need better quality, I think, at centre back. And right back would be my two main priorities, I suppose, in that order. And then, if we're getting greedy, striker. With Ramirez has gone out. I know he hasn't played a part really this season, or for the best part of the calendar year last year as well, for that matter. But he's gone out. You would assume a chunk of his wage will be available to, recruit other replacements potentially, and maybe one or two others are going out. We heard that Vinny Bozowen was on his way out the door potentially. That was a rumour going around that he was on his way out the door. I'd like to think that we don't do that now that Jim Goodwin's gone, and maybe press pause on that one and see how he does under Barry Robson and Steve Agnew. But definitely 3 would be required. And I suppose if we get 3 new faces in today, I'm dreaming now because I really can't see that happening. If we get 3 faces coming in today, then we can look forward with a bit more optimism, and maybe we won't have to throw in the young kids to the Lions' Den.
Yeah, I suppose I saw a few conversations around Vinny and the fact that he might be a bit disruptive and maybe not knowing when to knuckle down at the best times. But I'd like to think with someone like Barry Robson in charge, you're not going to really mess with Barry Robson. I'm sure he'll tell you in no uncertain terms. But the problem, I suppose, that we've got now at Aberdeen, of course, with Matty Pollock joining on loan, we'll come on to the goalkeeper, Jay Gorter, who's joined on loan from Ajax. But that takes us up to 8 loanees, I think it is now, at the club, or 7 potentially, depending if I've done my maths right. So we're either going to have to get rid of a loanee, or any more signings will need to be permanent. And we're giving ourselves, I think is it midnight the transfer deadline day closes in Scotland? So, less than 12 hours to get any deals done. It's going to be difficult because clubs will start driving hard bargains. Yes, we've freed up wages, you mentioned with Ramirez, but unless players are going out permanently or some of the loan players are returning to their parent clubs, our hands are almost a little bit tied just now in trying to get players in.
Yeah, it's never a good time to be bringing in that quantity of players. Anyway, I think January. I think we'd rather be doing this in the close season. But that goes back again to the massive mistakes that were made in recruitment in the summer, which we've already covered in the last 10 days. Yeah, so we have holes in the squad that are gaping. So we have a right back who's not a right back. I don't want to see Ross McCrory playing at right back or centre back for that matter. Some might say not at all after his recent performances. But I think in midfield, fine as an option in midfield, but not right back. We need a right back. Actually, we need a left back as well, come to think of it.
We could argue because, of course, just now we've only got Hayden Coulson, Johnny Hayes, and while Liam Scales, again, I suppose you could argue, could cover that role once he returns from suspension at left back. But again, that's 2 players on loan because your permanent left defenders are long-term absentees with injuries in Mason Hancock and Jack McKenzie.
Yeah, I'd like us to get defenders who can defend first and foremost. I know we have this strategy and we want to play good, attractive football, but look where it's got us so far. And you could argue that it's not been good or attractive because we've just been shelling it long to Duke or Miovski in the last couple of games, and it's just not working. So I want defenders who can defend, first and foremost. And come to think of it, if all 4 of the back 4 were to be rinsed and we got some new ones in, I wouldn't be shedding any tears, It's difficult. I mean, I can't see us. I maybe see us getting another defender in before the window shuts, and they'll have to muddle through with McCrory at right back and Coulson at left back, which puts the fear of God into me. And we'll just have to muddle through with that because we can't have everything that we want. It must be really difficult for the recruitment team to try and get the right players in. We're not going to get any more loanees, I don't think, as you were saying. So, making a commitment to sign a player on a permanent contract is going to be a big undertaking with the way the club is at the moment.
I think it's also a big undertaking when the player that you could be signing may not fancy whoever's coming in, or vice versa. The manager coming in is not a big fan of said player. We've kind of put ourselves in that difficult situation. If we don't bring anybody in between now and the window closing, what's your thoughts on the current state of the squad to get us into that European positions that the club obviously are wanting us to achieve? Do you have faith? I think by your reaction, shaking your head tells me all I need to know before you even vocalize your answer.
Well, they have to look. I know. I just put my head in my hands there, but I still believe, and this is really stupid considering what we've just witnessed the last 3 games. I still believe there is a decent group of players there that are capable of getting that European spot. But again, there's no characters in that group. There's very few characters in that group who you would like to be with you in the trenches when it's going to get difficult. So that's my only reservation is when things are going well, they play some nice football. We're not the worst team. I'd say we could potentially finish 4th if we were to play to our ability, but football's more than ability.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't have faith. No, faith's the wrong word. I don't have faith because we're only going one way. The players have to prove in the next few weeks that they can turn around the form and play to their ability. And if they can do that, then yes, we can. But the way things are going, it's just. I mean, what must the morale be like in the training center and in the dressing room? It has to be pretty rock bottom amongst those players, especially the ones who've been involved in the last 3 games. So, I just don't think that switches when Goodwin gets sacked. It can't, I don't imagine. And if it does, there'll be some serious questions to be answered by the senior players, quote unquote, as to why they completely down tools for Jim Goodwin and can suddenly turn it on against St Mirren when Goodwin's gone. So no, I've no faith, but I still have a belief that, the raw ability is there to get 4th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you also just need to look at some of the criticism aimed at Ramirez for downing tools last season that stuck with him even into this season. So if there is that immediate response from some of these senior players, will that criticism that we saw leveled at the American be equally leveled at some of the players currently with us as well? And I'm just wondering if we will see any departures from the squad today. I think a couple of the replies to the tweet said there's quite a large imbalance in that squad with some of the midfielders. I think I'm looking at the likes of Shayden Morris, who's not really been seen. I think, was it Park Thistle was his last game? I mean, that's the really last game I remember seeing him in. But you've got Dante Polvara, of course, who's hardly featured this season. I know he's had a bit of an injury problem as well, but could again probably benefit from a loan spell somewhere in Scotland just to even help him get used to Scottish football if he's going to be here next season as well. So it'll be interesting to see if we do get rid of anybody between now and the end of the window. I would like to think some of these players would be loans again if Vinny's is heading for the exit. I would now, given that Jim Goodwin has left the club, would prefer if he goes out on loan rather than permanently, because we've seen in spells what he can do for the club. Just unfortunately not seen it on a regular enough basis. Obviously, talk as well of Marley Watkins leaving, probably another high earner off the wage bill. Obviously, I think a few of you on social media will have seen that website that published some of the wages at the club and how accurate they are. Remains to be seen. Of course, Joe Lewis also on quite a high wage. So the arrival of Jay Gorter from Ajax kind of throws into question, will Joe Lewis remain as number one? I think recent performances suggest no. I think Jay will go straight into the team on Wednesday night. Of course, Tom Ritchie has also been recalled from his loan spell at Peterhead. And the arrival statement of Jay also confirmed that we will have a strong goalkeeping department stewarded by Craig Sampson. So I think, again, the club clearing up the position of Sampson, of course, question marks around whether or not he would stay at the club, whether or not he was maybe registered as a player after the Scottish Cup game as well. But looks like he'll be staying on as goalkeeping coach. Johnny, excited by that prospect.
Wonderful.
With the arrival of Jay, though, hasn't made many, if any, appearances for Ajax. In fact, only appeared once so far this season, conceding 5 in the Community Shield game to PSV Eindhoven. Of course, many might know that game for Calvin Bassey's debut, where he got himself sent off. So maybe Jay not helped by playing with 10 men in front of him, but shipping that amount of goals, he'll fit right into our defence. But I think it's safe to say, though, Johnny, he will be the number one keeper between now and Kelrose coming back into the team.
I think so. I think before the current sort of run of form, I was one of those, and I'll out myself now as one of those who wasn't convinced by Kelrose. But now I think he must be some sort of world beater, because if you were to look at our XG against stat, then we should be conceding more goals than we are, because we're giving up more chances, which I think we've seen 5 against Hearts, 6 against Hibs, and there were a couple of things you could look at. I think the 6th goal, potentially Lewis might have done a bit better. But the marking and defending for the set piece goals was abysmal. So again, he kind of skates a bit of criticism, but we've brought this guy in on loan. I would imagine Ajax want to see him getting first team action, so I don't think he's going to be on the bench. I think that's Joe Lewis back to the bench for the foreseeable. Another Dutch goalkeeper, we're quite fond of them. So yeah, I think he's coming in to play, and hopefully he'll be an improvement on Joe. I think Joe's just, his time has just come. He's been a great keeper for us. But yeah, it's clear. It was clear a bit last year as well, maybe, that he was starting to lose his touch a wee bit. And I don't know what it is, but whether it's age or whatever creeps up on him, he just doesn't seem to have that anymore. The command of his box, maybe it's the communication with the defenders as well. I just don't know what it is, but I think Gorter coming in will be a plus for us as long as he can save shots.
Yeah, hopefully as successful as the last lone goalkeeper in Danny Ward, of course, when he came in and the wonders that he worked. But if we look at in terms of his appearances, there was 19 appearances last season in total for, I think it was the young Ajax team he was playing. 18 of them came in the second division, where he kept 1 clean sheet. Although did keep a clean sheet in the Dutch FA Cup as well. But if you want some real data, of course, I'm sure Dave and the recruitment team have been looking at that thoroughly. He did play for Go Ahead Eagles in the 2021 season, playing 40 times with 26 clean sheets and 25 goals conceded. So he does have a bit of pedigree about him in terms of minutes. It's just unfortunately in the last couple of seasons that's been a bit lacking. But for those that maybe follow this Dutch second tier in terms of betting. I think a lot of you know that it's goals galore in that division as well. So, and again, maybe goes back to the fact that with our defence, at least he'll be used to shots coming down on him, and let's hope that he's of that standard of Keller Rose in terms of keeping the shots out of the back of the net as well. I think, Johnny, as we said, it's fair to say that both Matty and Jay will make their Aberdeen debuts tomorrow night as St Mirren visit Pittodrie. With Barry Robson taking charge for the first time, how many other changes do you think we'll see from the side that started the game against Hibs? Because it's going to be an interesting one, not just team-wise, but what crowd we'll see at Pittodrie, what the atmosphere will be like, given this is, of course, the first time we've played at home in quite a long time.
Yeah, it's wild. We haven't had any home games for what seems like an age. And a lot's happened since then. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know if the crowd breaks much beyond 10,000, to be honest. And I know people will say you need to get behind the team and what have you. They don't deserve it, to be honest. I mean, they need to prove to the fans, first and foremost, that they are there to do their job, to work, to be organised, and not to chuck it. So, yes, the team will get the backing of the fans, but not unconditionally, in my opinion. They have to make up for the complete shambles they've made and the laughingstock they've made of the club. So for me, I want them to show us rather than do any talking. I think we might see. I don't think we'll see many changes. Do you know? I just don't think we have that much depth unless you're going to bring in the likes of Shaden Morris and give him a go. I just don't see that, to be honest, because there can't be that much of a gap between Goodwin's perception of a player and Barry Robson's. I don't think so. I'd be amazed if we saw wholesale changes on many more than the two that you've outlined just now, and that might be a good thing. That could be a good thing, put them back out there so soon after a humbling, and prove that you're not diddies, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of fair. Put them back out there and almost throw them to the lions in a sense, and face up to a home crowd that will be pent up frustration with what's happened over the last 10 to 13 days, of course, by the time match day comes around. And, I've seen some people say that they'll boo the team onto the pitch. I mean, each to their own. I just think the atmosphere, certainly at the start of the game, is going to be a bit surreal. With, of course, how people are entitled to react. I think you're right about the crowd as well. Again, I saw a few comments from people living in the Central Belt or further afield that if the players can't put in the effort, why should they make the effort to, travel up to Aberdeen on a midweek, early finish at work, home late for working the next day? It's just not appealing just now. And, some fans from Aberdeen have the same feeling when away games come out just now, that appeal is not there when the players' effort is certainly lacking. You mentioned, though, Johnny, the defending at set pieces, well, lack of defending, I think we should call it, at the weekend. St Mirren scored from a ball into the box against Motherwell. I don't think it was a direct set piece. But again, if you're St Mirren and Stephen Robinson, that is 100% what you'll be working on to exploit this weekend. Again, obviously a new centre-back pairing for Aberdeen on Wednesday night as well. How much do you think Barry Robson will have been focusing on improving the way we defend going into tomorrow night? Because ultimately, you mentioned about Cormac and this expansive or attractive football he wants to play, but it doesn't matter how the 3 points come about tomorrow. As long as we get them, that's all we care about at the end of the day.
No, there's a saying, I suppose. I watch a bit of rugby as well for what it's worth. And there's a saying in rugby that you have to earn the right to play expansive rugby, right? It's the same in football. You have to be solid before you can start doing fancy tricks and flicks and what have you. You have to be able to do the basics. And if you're if we were scoring 4 and letting in 3, maybe you would say, "Hey, this is worth it." It's expansive football. Sure, we're losing goals, but we're scoring more than we concede. I think we have to not forget about that sort of the goal of playing attractive football. It's still a laudable goal, but if we're not winning, it doesn't really matter. We have to be able to do both, especially in games at home against St Mirren. I don't really care if it goes in off a backside or if it's a penalty. I couldn't care less. I just want us to win, get 3 points, and give the players a lift. Not that they deserve it, but give them a bit of a lift going into the weekend. As far as booing them onto the pitch goes, I'm not there myself. Although I wouldn't blame anyone for doing it. So you pay your money, you can do what you like, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not going to tell anyone how to support the team, or I'm not a fan of people who say there's a way to support the team. You do what you want to do. You pay your money. I think the silent treatment might be more effective than booing them on, but I just don't see them getting a warm reception.
Yeah, you see
who do turn up.
Some of these ultra groups in Europe doing the silent protests for X amount of minutes, or they don't come into the ground until the game's officially kicked off, and really let the players and club know how the feeling is. Although I don't expect to see something like that from the Red Shed. Of course, you saw how well the ultras group backed the team, even at 4 or 5-0 down. At Hibs at the weekend, and then obviously let the anger out once the full-time whistle was blown. But obviously we're recording this halfway through transfer deadline day, and it's not just obviously Aberdeen involved in transfer dealings. The visitors tomorrow night also have their own dealings going on. So far there's not been any inbounds that we know of, but outbounds, midfielder Ethan Erahon looks set to move to Lincoln City in a move valued at £350,000. A good bit of business for a club like St Mirren, with the utmost respect. And new Wigan manager Sean Maloney looks to be raiding the Scottish Premiership with midfielder Keanu Bacchus, who only joined the club in the summer, on his radar as well. So potentially a couple of players missing. Of course, Keanu did miss the weekend's win over Motherwell through suspension anyway, but maybe likely to have come back into the team. Joe Shaughnessy, of course, a former Don, missed the game through injury at the weekend. Not sure whether or not he's going to be fit. Of course, you also have other former Dons, Declan Gallagher and Curtis Main, of course, the goal scorer from the weekend, looking to continue his form and put another nail in the cut in his former employer as well when they come up. So, I mean, St Mirren still have that game in hand against us, Johnny, above us in the league just now as well. This is a huge game for both sides and their top 6 ambitions. I mean, it feels really bad that we're speaking about that from an Aberdeen point of view at this moment in time, but that's where, unfortunately, we've fallen to. I think we simply can't afford to lose this game.
No, it's bizarre again that we're in this position in January talking about one win and we could potentially be back up to 4th. So we're 7th at the moment. If I think Ross County are playing Hibs this midweek as well. You wouldn't say that they were favourites, but you wouldn't put it past them to beat Hibs, given how flaky they can be. Celtic are at home to Livy, I think. So it's just one win puts us back into 4th, which is just a bizarre state of affairs for Scottish football in general. But equally, again, if St Mirren beat us, God forbid, and then win their game in hand, I don't know who that's against, then they put a bit of daylight between us and potentially the chasing back, up to 4th. So there's a lot on the line for them as well. And for all that, when you look at the potential starting 11s for both teams, and if we're assuming Erahon's gone, although I did that with Nisbet last week and look what happened there. So it's not signed yet, so I'm going to say nothing. Assuming Erahon's gone, I think Kaboya Ayunga is injured as well. There's nothing really you would say Oh, he would definitely get into our starting 11. So,
Well, the only
looking at it,
player, I mean, currently the only player I would probably take from St Mirren into our starting 11 is their right back, Ryan Strain, who not only can hit a dead ball, but obviously got the assist as well at the weekend. I know maybe those that play fantasy football for Scotland will maybe have him in their side. So it's certainly a position that we're screaming out for. He would probably be the only player that I would currently take.
yeah, you're showing me up there. My knowledge of other teams' players is pretty poor. But if he's a defender and a right-sided defender and he can actually defend, yeah, he would improve our team. Of course, he would. Their left back as well, probably, given the state of ours at the moment. But yeah, when you look at the two teams, you'd have to say we should have enough about us to beat them. But Stephen Robinson can organise a team, and he always managed to be able to squeeze a team that's more that a performance is more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
So they'll come up to Pittodrie thinking we can get all 3 points. There'll be no fear there whatsoever. It might be good for us that they might think that, but I don't think Robinson will allow them to be open. I think he'll still want to keep them compact just to frustrate us and then play us in the break. We'll see what happens. But,
that was going to be my next question. And looking at the table, of course, you mentioned St Mirren's game in hand. That game in hand is away to Motherwell, of course, who sit 9 points below us in the league. Yeah, they sit 9 points. Livingston also, as you said, if a win potentially does take us fourth in the league, depending on the Hibs result, Livingston do themselves also have a game in hand over us against Dundee United. That game at home for the Lions. It's interesting you mentioned that about St Mirren, though, and what they might do when they come up here. I just wondered if they might try and look to exploit us in that opening exchanges, maybe first 10 minutes, try and get at us. Obviously, we're vulnerable, new coaching staff, crowd that are not going to be necessarily fully behind the team 100%, as we've kind of discussed for various reasons, and the people that are entitled to voice their opinions. So maybe looking to exploit any sort of unease in that atmosphere in the early stages, or do you think Barry Robson might have that approach? Let's go out there, let's impose ourselves on the game, take the game to St Mirren, try and win the crowd over as quickly as possible for anybody that's out there looking to jump on our back as soon as we make that first mistake.
It's going to be interesting, I have to say. It's a nice little subplot to the whole game. I don't know. I think the crowd might get frustrated if we're not 1-0 up by 20 minutes. I don't think Robinson doesn't need for them to be, 1 or 2 up after having picked us apart. He just needs to frustrate us, I think. We've seen under Goodwin before when they came up and they were a bit more expansive. We picked them apart.
Yeah.
I think he'll probably be thinking, let's just frustrate them. They can beat us 2 or 3-0 just by playing us on the counter attack the way we're defending at the moment.
Yeah.
There's nothing. They don't have to be expansive to beat us. There's more than one way that they can go about that. And as far as we're concerned, I don't think we'll be too gung ho. We need to be physical, I think, and we need to be all the things we haven't been lately. Put the effort in. We need to win the midfield battle. Do all those cliched old tired phrases. But we have to. I want to see Shinnie crunching a few people and getting the crowds, on his side or on our side, because that does get the crowd up. I think when Shinnie, his first game back, he put in a few tackles and he was hounding the ref, and everybody loved it. It was just what we hadn't seen from anybody wearing red for the whole season. So I think we need to see some of that just to lift the mood and to get the fans off their back. Why am I saying this? I think we'll probably win tomorrow night. I just, I don't know how we do. I don't care how we do it. It might be 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that. But we need a win. desperately, and this is more in hope than expectation. I think I'll go for 2-1.
2-1. I'm getting hopes up already. Of course, Mirren, despite their excellent home form, their away form has been on the complete opposite end of the scale. I mean, they're probably rivaling us in terms of away form, albeit at least they pick up points on the road. But they've not picked up 3 points on the road since defeating Dundee United 3-0 at Tannadice back in August. They've only scored, I think it's 1 goal I've put down in the notes in January away from home as well, or maybe even 1 goal in general in January. No, 2 goals in January. So, I mean, it's not really for us to talk. We're not in the best form, goal scoring form as well, but away from home and up front, St Mirren have their problems. So, I want to. Oh, this is going to come back to bite me, but almost say, I know you're nodding in agreement, but almost the ideal sort of opponent to come up against a team that struggle to score and aren't the best on the road as well. But I really just don't know what to expect from this Aberdeen side.
Oh, God. I mean, it's classic Aberdeen. A team who hasn't won away from home since August is coming to Pittodrie.
Yeah.
We know what happens next. We're brilliant at snapping bad runs of our opponents. We're brilliant at it. But in all seriousness, I mean, if you look at just look at the raw data, we should be winning this game. I can't even believe we're even discussing the possibility of not winning this game, to be honest. But hey, this is where we are at the moment. Who knows? I mean, it's a toss-up, really, but you always have hope, and until that hope disappears, I'm going to cling on to it. We're not really down in the relegation scrap yet. We can't go any lower than 7th come Wednesday night, after tomorrow's game. So we're not going to get any worse in the league in terms of position. So I just we have to snap out of it sometime. I mean, if we don't, we're in deeper trouble than just not qualifying for Europe.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, we can't drop any lower than 7th. St Johnstone and Motherwell face off against each other, as do Dundee United and Kilmarnock. So for those looking over our shoulder, at least most of the teams below us are playing each other, which helps, unless, of course, there's 2 draws and they gain on us if we don't pick up anything. But let's try and be positive. As you said, it's hard to think of us not winning tomorrow, but unfortunately that's what the last 3 games have kind of led us to, is thinking in that kind of negative mindset. And hopefully come full time tomorrow, we do finally have a bit of positivity to bring to you on this podcast. Callum should finally make his long-awaited return to the podcast on Thursday night when we come back reviewing whatever happens at Pittodrie, and also whatever happens between now and the transfer window closing, as we take a look ahead to Motherwell's visit as well in that episode as well. But thanks again to you, Johnny, for ably assisting me again on the podcast, and hopefully it's helped energize you a little bit ahead of tomorrow night.
I think genuinely it does help. I don't know why I let the hope get over, take over, because yesterday I was saying there's no way I can see us winning, and now I've got us winning 2-1 in 4th, hopefully by the end of tomorrow night, and looking up. How many points are we behind Hearts? No, I'm joking. That's a joke. I think we can kiss that goodbye. But yeah, let's just get some wins. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it indeed. Until next time, thanks very much for tuning in.